not. So, first of all, who is the Alliance? What do we do? We're obviously focused on the Chesapeake Bay watershed. I am out of our Pennsylvania office. I'm our Pennsylvania Forest Projects Coordinator, which is an important point. Every once in a while, I meet with someone and they're like, "Wow, how was the drive for Maryland?" And I don't know, probably bad. I live in Lancaster, and the drive is usually also bad. But yeah, we focus on just working with communities, working with businesses, working with landowners, pretty much anyone who will work with us. We're not a litigious organization. We are almost entirely grant funded. So these kind of projects are kind of really important to how we operate, what we do, and our DNA. So we're here and we are happy to help with anyone who wants to engage with us. Jeez, I am really sloppy this morning. Okay, so first of all, before we get into the kind of more, stormwatery side of things, and this is maybe, my personal philosophy, but I think we really should be working on urban tree canopy expansion no matter what. Even if, all the Chesapeake Bay stuff is satisfied eventually, even if stormwater permitting gets, different goals are met, I think this is something that every municipality should really, be focused on, because there are so many services that trees and forest cover provide for humans. I personally feel that it's a human right, to have air, water, a livable, neighborhood. I live in Lancaster City in a neighborhood called Cabbage Hill. It's in the southwest of the city, and there's not a lot of street trees here in the summertime when it's like 95 degrees for 3 weeks straight. It's brutal. Just the whole neighborhood bakes. A lot of my neighbors don't have AC. We have a couple window units, but it's bad. It's bad news. You can go to the wealthier, parts of the city that do have street trees, and it's kind of nice. It's breezy. It's cool. This really is something that we really should be focusing on. I understand that there's a lot of practical, pragmatic limitations to doing anything. Everything costs money. Every municipality is strapped for cash. But I think this is something that we have to do because, ultimately we're, working on, y'all are working on, taking care of the folks who live in your neighborhoods and your community. And I think this is a big part of that. So beyond just those kind of, clean air, clean water, all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of studies that have come out in the last decade or so that very strongly correlate human health, economic value with canopy cover. It's an important thing. And so we really should be trying to get it as much as we can. And I kind of, this is another little dig. We're getting a little loose here this morning. But I think we should factor this into the calculus of deciding what BMPs we're going to be putting in place, is how many other benefits do they give us besides just like the numbers on paper, and we don't do as much of this kind of, just detention basin anymore. But how many co-benefits does this provide? Yes, it is handling some of that, stormwater pressure, but what else is it doing for us? Where we have trees that do all these other things for us, and people want them, and it helps the town in many other ways. So what are these BMPs? And I want to spend a little bit of time just talking about kind of the classic urban tree canopy. And again, my whole kind of message here is that it can be easier than it's been touted to be in the past. It doesn't have to be as hard as it oftentimes is. But that extends to kind of just your classic urban canopy tree, urban street tree too. But then I want to spend a lot of time talking about the other kind of the real low-hanging fruits, I think. If there's any open space in a municipality for urban forest planting, essentially. So that could be in the riparian setting, which would give you a little bit more credits, or it could be in an upland area. But whatever it is, if there's empty space in your municipality, this is something that you could do to get some reductions, and also reduce mowing costs. Is just a pragmatic decision, and that's kind of what I really want to focus on, is how to make these work, for the municipality too. Not just something nice to have, something extra, another additional cost, but something that will help, just the operations of the municipality as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out down there that there on the left is actually Moscow. And that is, I do not want to live in Moscow or in Russia at all, but I want to live somewhere like that with that much urban tree canopy. And maybe, they just trying to screen those ugly Soviet era buildings. But when it rains in that neighborhood, it's probably somewhat dry underneath all those trees. You know what I mean? Like those trees are working for that neighborhood, and that's what I think we can totally accomplish. We can easily accomplish that. If the Soviets could do it, we can too. You know. So yeah, let's start with those kind of classic urban tree canopy, really street trees. That's what a lot of folks think about when they think about urban tree canopy, and they are fantastic. I'm a big street tree guy. I love a street tree. They're necessary for so many reasons. We really, all these benefits, especially for stormwater, the closer to the street they are, the better they'll be. But there's a lot of practical downsides, and I think this is something, it's a gauntlet that just, it's too much for a lot of municipalities if they're a little bit smaller or whatever. They have different priorities. And so this isn't really something that a lot of people feel would be a pragmatic decision to take. So they're costly if you don't have those tree wells already in place and you have to excavate them out. That's an immense cost. It's always these giant trees that cost like $400, and you have to put them in with a tractor, and you have to have trained people to do it, and they usually still do it wrong, and it's just like, it's a mess. There's the poor survival a lot of times with these street trees. There's human conflict, vandalism. This is in Lancaster City, just walking the dog, and I guess someone either lit one of those water bags on fire, or maybe put something inside of that to light on fire, maybe a firework, I don't know, but the tree bag burned. That's obviously not helping with the moisture on this young tree, and it probably damaged the tree tissue too, so that's lovely. But again, and here too on the right, and that is my dog Newt. This is something that a lot of municipalities, when I'm talking about urban tree canopy, the first thing they think is, oh boy, nope. We do not want our sidewalks to get messed up. We do not want, our roads to get messed up, et cetera. So, the answer is just no across the board. It doesn't have to be like this, which we're going to talk about, but this is a serious issue. And in a lot of more, urban settings like here in Lancaster City, where every street tree is, the sidewalks messed up. I think a lot of us are used to it, but in a setting where that's not the case, I think that is definitely something to think of. But I will say, being a tree guy, and I'm actually, a forest ecologist more than a stormwater person, I kind of got sort of shifted into the stormwatery world when I just started working here at a water-focused organization. But that silver maple was given about a foot of space to grow, originally. And, this is kind of what we expect if you put clothes on a baby and then get upset when the baby grows out of those clothes. Like, that's kind of silly, So I think part of this legacy of a conflict between, the people in street trees is just because they weren't really, given the appropriate amount of space, the appropriate amount of care early on. And, we all know that. Everybody's kind of well-versed at this point in that. So my point is we can kind of get around it. We don't have to just kind of keep trying in that same traditional way to put in street trees. I do think those traditional street trees are still, absolutely valuable, absolutely worth the investment. So I wanted to be very clear about that. I don't think we should abandon street tree efforts. So again, here on the top is my street, Poplar Street. It's named after a tree. Not a lot of trees on Poplar Street. There's really not many. I should count sometime. There's probably, 10 or something on my whole street. And then there down below is that, wealthier neighborhood, Chestnut Street. The Chestnut Hill neighborhood. Everybody loves it. And obviously, too, there's so many other factors there. It's way wider. The houses are nicer, et cetera, et cetera. But it's very hard to kind of get a toehold into becoming a nicer neighborhood if you don't have a lot of urban tree canopy. You don't have a lot of shade. You don't have nice trees. You don't have nice things. It's just going to kind of continually be sort of the lower neighborhood. It's just valuable. It's really valuable to do for the people who live there, and for the future potential of that neighborhood for your town. So again, street trees, love them. Let's keep doing it. But we can expand our urban tree canopy in many other ways, and that's what kind of the rest of my little chat here this morning is going to be. First of all, remember, yard trees and park trees count. And they can be super cheap. They can be way less intense, way less upfront work, planning work, utility stuff. It can be a lot simpler. And oftentimes they have way better survival. And people want them. People are planting them all the time on their own, just voluntarily. And so there's a lot of ways we can tap into that. Just the fact that people want shade trees, people want pollinators, people want songbirds. People want fruit-bearing trees in the backyard. Like, we can capture just the public, regard for trees, and achieve some BMPs that way for, potentially very, very cheap, or potentially even free if you can get creative about tracking it. And again, well, maybe this is kind of out of order, but on the note of kind of yard trees, park trees, things like that, there is just so much more wiggle room when you're giving them a lot of space. And I kind of, my little saying is that if you give trees enough space, enough time, they're going to just give back so much in return. I do think that's another important component of this. All the urban tree canopy costs, headaches, etc., are worth it, I think. They're an investment in how much this tree is giving back to us. But these trees clearly have not been managed, pruned, anything. But they are far enough off the street that they're not really causing much of an issue. Obviously, I wish they were better pruned, because at some point that big trunk to the right is going to fall onto their fence, and God knows what they're going to do with the entire tree after they start removing that. But this canopy extends all the way past the street. It is capturing all the rainwater that would be landing on the street and going very fast, down that street. Yeah, just working for us for a really long time, providing shade for the neighborhood too. And again, it's not causing any issues. We can plant these trees just in slightly different places. Again, not getting away from street trees, but we can just focus on elsewhere too, and achieve some of these benefits without all those headaches. And this is kind of really getting in. I do think yard trees especially are a low-hanging fruit because people want trees in their backyard. But the riparian forest buffers, urban forest planting, there are just so many resources out there to help. So many people want to do this stuff. All we need as the NGOs, as DCNR, etc., we just need the space, if municipalities have the space, if you have unused areas or like lightly used areas that are near streams especially, just give one of us a call and we can potentially, have a project there. Another thing that's important to say, the minimum for a riparian forest buffer, whether it's in the urban sector or the ag sector, is 35 feet. That's an average. So if there's, a place that's a little bit tighter, we can, make up for it elsewhere to get that 35-foot average. That's totally okay. It's DCNR, totally okay in the Bay model. And then another thing is the maximum is actually 300 feet from the stream. So even a planting that has, a house in between the planting and the stream is still within that riparian zone, and that would count as riparian forest buffer acreage. So again, we can just kind of be a little bit more, we can dig a little bit deeper, and we can bring these to the landscape and get some BMPs in the ground for at free of cost for the municipality. It really, doesn't have to be over-designed, doesn't have to be overpriced. A lot of entities like my own, we have funding to do all that for you. So just, give us a call, and we can turn this area into a forest. So this down here is Paradise Community Park, in, Paradise, PA, right along the Peckway in Lancaster County. This little section was never used of the park. There's a ton of ball fields and stuff that are very, very popular. You can see one of the lights for the field there on the picture on the right, on the other side of the creek. But on this side of the creek, especially here where it's kind of wet, there's just nothing happens here. And so we can plant, these, I think it was 2 acres or so, without really any dig into the public use of it. At some point, it'll be nice and shady and people can enjoy walking around back there, but they're probably not going to go back there too much because they don't now, but at least it'll be giving back to the municipality. It's meeting some BMPs, and it's protecting the Peckway Creek there as well. Maintenance is something that is really, really important with riparian forest buffers, and it is something that holds a lot of people back. But I think, again, we can think outside the box a little bit. We can dig a little bit deeper, and we can make sure this happens pretty effectively and efficiently and cheaply. And also another note that I like to say, the maintenance is a thing. It is a lot of work, but it's like 3 to 5 years of work. And by 3 to 5 years of work, I mean like 2 to 3 visits in a whole year. How much maintenance do you have to do on every other BMP? Even that detention basin, that's just, someone has to mow it. And this is very light maintenance is what I'm trying to get across. Down here is a picture. This is a Boy Scout troop. This is a planting at a church property that was just kind of left open, it's all that reed canary grass there. Reed canary grass is non-native, it's invasive, it's going to suppress anything from regenerating underneath it. And so until the end of time, this would have just been reed canary grass down here. And it's just kind of in the back part of a church's property. So we can plant it here. And the Boy Scout troop that uses that church to meet is actually doing 100% of the maintenance for us. So I thought this was pretty wild. I've never seen something like this in my life. What they did is all the dads lined up every row of trees with a weed whacker, and they just started going. And then the kids were behind them doing all the shelter maintenance and stuff like that. It was pretty wild. So yeah, we can kind of dig a little bit deeper and figure out ways to do this for pretty easy. And that's another kind of sort of note I want to make, is that there's a lot of people who want to engage in this kind of work in every single community in the country. People are more aware of environmental issues, climate change, pollinator collapses. They want to do something. They want to help. And that we can do it here in their own communities. They'll have more stewardship over it. You'll have more local engagement. It's just a good thing to do. So kind of some particulars of what that maintenance entails, because again, I think it's kind of this big scary thing that holds a lot of people back. It's a barrier, but it doesn't have to be, that big or that scary. First of all, if it's already a lawn, there's very little additional maintenance. Just keep mowing it until you don't have to mow anymore because there's so much shade. You can reduce the frequency to start saving money immediately instead of mowing it once every week, maybe once every month or something like that. But just doing that can oftentimes be enough. You don't have to do any additional maintenance to get those trees established. Sometimes you do have to spray, herbicide rings around each shelter, especially in areas like this that are wet, where there's a lot of vole habitat. That is a valuable thing to do to increase the survival, reduce the vole depredation. But again, super easy, super quick. Jason mentioned the permitting and stuff before. With all of these practices, there's very little permitting that's required. You're not moving any earth. We do a PA1 call. We make sure we're not underneath power lines. That's pretty much it. Super simple, super easy. And again, those tree care tasks are just perfect opportunities for volunteers, for interns, even just if you have an energetic member of your staff who wants to go out there and do it, once every couple months on Saturdays. It doesn't take that long to just remove those bird nets, straighten the shelters, get it done. And again, we can tap into the immense amount of people who are already engaged and trained to do this kind of stuff in our area. So the urban forest planting, I think this is one, a lot of people have, thought about the urban riparian forest buffers, but the urban forest planting is somewhat new of a practice. Pennsylvania has started this lawn conversion program, and this is kind of one of the flagship practices there. It's urban forest planting, and then the conservation landscaping, which is converting that lawn area into more of a meadow cover. But it's just so easy. It's just so easy and so simple and so cheap and so permanent, So all the specifics, at least 200 trees per acre, which comes out to about a 15-foot by 15-foot spacing. I like to actually put in more trees than that, just so that we don't have to worry as much about each individual tree. If, say, a buck kind of roams in 10 years from now and just starts rubbing stuff, to death, then if we planted 75 more trees per acre, we don't have to worry as much about each individual. But those are the basics. And so this down here is in South Lebanon Township, south of Lebanon borough and or city, I guess. And just a vacant FEMA buyout lot, or I guess it was PEMA. There was a flood several years ago. Destroyed some properties, really unfortunate, but it's just been sitting here as lawn for years and years at this point. The municipality has to mow it because they now own it. They have to take care of it. That's kind of part of the buyout process. It wasn't doing anything good for anyone. A couple people would walk their dogs on the edge of it, but that's it. And so why not plant the trees here? Within a couple years, all the maintenance is done. All the mowing's done. We got to do it with volunteers from the community. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun. All the neighbors get excited. There's always one or two grumpy neighbors, but I was surprised here. Every time someone comes out and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" When I'm setting things up, I'm always like, "Okay, here it comes," But everyone was like, "Oh, cool, trees. Awesome. Great. When are you going to plant them? Can I come?" That kind of stuff. So, and really, it is something that's it's a low-hanging fruit. It's so easy to do. There's just so much space in a lot of municipalities to do this. And so it's not just, buyout land or other kind of vacant land, but parks, again, churches, schools, there's a lot of space in a lot of municipalities that's just getting mowed. There's really no other use than just mowing, and there's resources available right now to do all of this for free. So the only thing the municipality has to do is sign the agreement, maybe like 1 or 2 meetings beforehand, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. We know the sites are good to go, but that's it. And then, the municipality keeps doing the maintenance, or some programs might do the maintenance for you, depending on the situation. And then 3 to 5 more years, pretty much done here. It's just a nice little forest, passive park. We planted this one with some edible fruiting species in there too. I like to make species mixes that'll be really colorful in the autumn. So again, we are enhancing this neighborhood by doing this, and it's going to meet some BMPs, get some reductions on the books, and save money over time. Here's another example. This one is from Pine Grove, right up in Schuylkill County, a little bit north of our kind of, 4-county region here for today. And I just wanted to kind of show exactly what this looks like. So we got reached out to by a member of the Pine Grove community, not, part of the municipal government or anything, but just a resident who had all these lots. She's been a master gardener for a little bit or something. I can't remember exactly the details, but she just kind of found our information, reached out to us, and we started digging into it. I generated these nitrogen phosphorus sediment reduction based on all these tree planting potentials on some FEMA buyout land that they had that currently just like people are just kind of parking in it, and that's it, yeah, you could see the numbers there. It's not immense. So for 3.87 acres of mostly urban forest buffer, but some of that urban forest planting, there were some places that were further back from the stream that would count as urban forest planting. So yeah, it's not gonna completely change your portfolio, but it is at zero cost to the municipality. All they have to do is say yes, and it's going to provide all these benefits, and it's going to save a lot of money from mowing at the very least, and it's going to add to your MS4 portfolio. So it is helpful. It's not going to change everything, but it is going to be helpful for you, and it's going to be very, very little work on the municipality's end. And so yeah, again, I don't know. Trees don't have a great reputation in cities. I think a lot of it is because of that legacy of conflict, sort of mismanagement, kind of misunderstanding. But they're very long-lasting BMPs. That's kind of another thing that I wanted to impart. And if we treat them right, if we do them well, we plant the right species in the right places, they will be here a very long time, and they'll be working for us that entire time. And we can compare that to any of the other BMPs. I mean, even, I really love all the cutouts, the rain gardens, like that kind of stuff is cool. I love seeing all the cool little species in there. Those require so much maintenance. For the trees, they do require maintenance, but it's like, an hour a year, you know what I mean? Maybe less. And then within a couple of years, you're done for potentially, centuries. It's just, it's an efficient way to go about it. And kind of another thing on that kind of creative note, the low-hanging fruit note, I think we can get a lot done by just kind of thinking outside the box a little bit, getting a little bit creative. And so, the where, the who, and the how, and the what. And the where, again, parks, yards, just empty lots, etc. Could just be 1 or 2 trees with a simple tube shelter on it to protect it from deer, or it could be a whole, a forest planting area. Whatever it is, we can very quickly and easily get this done. There's a lot of, I think every county in this 4-county area has a master something, a master watershed stewards group, a master naturalist group. There are people who are volunteers who want to help their community. They want to green their community, and this could be an outlet for them. If you tap into some of these people, they can carry a lot of this weight for you. And so here's an example. I have a volunteer, Wendy, the super volunteer. She digs up, maple seedlings and red buds and stuff like that are in her yard and her friends' yards, whatever. She gathers a lot of seeds, and she just grows stuff for me for free. I think we spend like $100 a year on potting soil. That's it. And she just takes care of them, and then I just come in my pickup truck, pick them up, and then plant them in buffer sites. So I'm not paying anything for these, except, for 1,000 trees, $100 of soil is a pretty good deal. And they do really well. We make sure they're native. We have parameters, and Wendy and I have worked together to kind of, fine tune this process. But again, it's free. It's free trees that could be handed out to landowners to put in their, or homeowners in their backyards. There's just a million different ways you can go about it. Just be a little bit more creative. It does take a little bit more, elbow grease, a little bit more time, communication. Not something that you're just going to be able to pass off to some, engineer to do. But it's free or cheap, and just so much, better in so many other ways. Okay, so real quick, I think we're kind of getting a little shorter on time, but I wanted to kind of talk about the funding options. So Tree Vitalize is great, really quick, really easy, especially for park plantings, things like that. Apologies if you could hear my beagle howling in the background. Who knows, maybe somebody's out shoveling. Probably not. But the C2P2 grants, the Community Conservation Partnership Program, are also fantastic. A good way to go for, individual sites or, programs that you have for a municipality. And then on the note of free trees, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation has their Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership. The K10 partnership is what they've called it. And they have large potted stock. I have gotten 7-gallon, 10-foot tall sycamores, river birches from them. You can get trees to plant as street trees, urban trees, yard trees, whatever. You can get them for free from CBF, and they want you to because they can use it towards their reporting. Their goals are to plant 10 million of the things, so they want to give them out to you. So again, we can do this for a lot easier than I think traditionally thought. So, as a municipal entity or a representative of a municipality, again, all we are really looking for is space and the signature. And there's a lot of partners out there who can handle everything else from the planning to even the one call. You don't have to lift a finger, really, and the maintenance on the backside of making sure it becomes a forest and not just a tree planting. So I would really highly recommend. There's a lot. It's what we're here for. There's a lot of people who are here to help. If you're in the Chester, Lancaster County area, the service forester is John Nissen. If you're in the Dauphin, Lebanon, it's Andy Brott. Both are great guys. They're super busy, but they're great guys. Also, DCNR has a very small watershed forestry team in their Bureau of Forestry. And Teddy Stark, I'm sure a lot of y'all have kind of seen her around. She coordinates that whole watershed forestry effort. So if there's any kind of questions, if you have some space, if you don't really know where to go and you have some ideas, then they can be excellent resources for you. And, I'll also offer, I can perform that function too, even if it's just a quick phone call, a quick email, that kind of thing. We are entering my planting season soon. Despite the snow, we're actually cutting live stakes tomorrow. So, it might take me a little bit while to respond, but I'll respond by May or so if you email me now. And also, again, there's tons of other partners around. This area is so rich in entities that are working towards these means. So Penn State Ag and Environment Center is fantastic. The Lebanon Valley Conservancy up there in Lebanon County, and I think they work a little bit in Dauphin too. Lancaster Conservancy, the Doc Fritchie TU chapter, which is Dauphin and Lebanon counties. Donegal TU chapter, which is in Lancaster County. There's tons of people who can do this. Reach out to one of us. We can connect you with the right people, and we can get this done for you for free, and everybody wins. So there is my information there, my email. Again, reach out to me. Happy to answer questions here. I think we have a little bit of time, maybe not a ton of time, but yeah, thank you, and let's go plant some trees.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. So we have about 10 minutes for questions. So remember from yesterday, please put your question in the chat. I think we do have 10 minutes left, so if you want to just ask your question directly to Ryan, please raise your hand. So just so we're not all speaking at once, and we can ask some questions.
Jason, would you like me to close my stop the presentation and put it in?
I think you can leave it up.
Okay.
I have some questions back to it. Did you see the chat, Ryan?
I have another. So yeah, I promise I'm looking at my other screen here. To the right.
I can read it if not, but you feel free to go ahead and address the questions in the chat.
Excellent. Yeah. So I hear there's from Mary Lou Lowry. Is all the trees, the assistance available outside the Chesapeake Bay watershed? Yes, it is. So whether you're all the way over in Pittsburgh, if you're in Philly, those are your best bets. If you're up in like Venango County, it might be a little bit harder, but DCNR is your way to go for that. So I'm actually going to go back in my presentation. There we go. So Teddy Stark, if you have watershed forestry kind of goals, needs, reach out to her, and she's kind of the hub at DCNR for connecting folks here. So, and Pennsylvania's working really hard. It's just the money right now is in the Chesapeake Bay watershed to do this kind of stuff. Like EPA is sending money to DCNR to do this kind of stuff. There's just a lot more funding here. But I promise DCNR is working really hard. They wish there was more available in both the Ohio and the Delaware watersheds too. So, matter of time. You're welcome, Mary Lou. Let's see. I don't know if there's any other. I think the only other question was about Teams itself. So.
Yeah. Are there any other questions for Ryan? Either in the chat or feel free to go ahead and ask.
And I guess one thing I am, and kind of how I got sort of roped into this presentation this morning, is we're presenting on a kind of a case study of exactly what I'm talking about here. Urban riparian forest buffer. I think we planted 4.6 acres or something in Oxford Borough, which is like in the borough limits. And we're going to be talking about that in I think 1110 or something. So if you want to hear a very specific example of how that gets done, then we're going to talk about that later too. But if you're tired of hearing me talk, I understand that as well. Okay. Ooh, what are my favorite tree species? Oh my goodness. So sycamore is king, especially for urban, areas. It just grows so fast, really doesn't care what kind of, terrible soil it's in. Sycamore is a champion for sure. But I in more of a, reforestation area, I still plant, mostly sycamore, but or tons and tons and tons of sycamore. I generally try to plant about 25 species if I'm planting a, forest planting site just for diversity. But one that I have started to really love is swamp white oak. It grows really fast for an oak. It grows, well, not even just for an oak. It grows pretty fast, period. But it's just a beautiful tree, beautiful leaves, good for wildlife. That's a really good one. But I think, and kind of to the spirit of my sort of initial, the low-hanging fruit side, people are really into this stuff, and there's a lot of species that are just kind of weird and cool that people like to have around. So pawpaw is a great example. American plum, I have some American plums in my yard. I planted, let's see, I could tell you what I planted in my little tiny city backyard to tell you what some of my favorites are. Red osier dogwood's another great one, a river birch, sweet May magnolia, redbud's another really good one. So yeah, again, we can use the sort of, aesthetic and pollinator based stewardship kind of things to help people get this done.
Okay. Any other questions for Ryan? We have about 5 more minutes on the agenda.
What's your favorite tree species, Jason?
So, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. We're the city of Oaks.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, just a few months ago, bought a house in Oak Park. I definitely like a good oak.
So I went to NC State for my undergrad.
Okay.
Go Pack. Yeah.
Go Pack. Yeah, I was there NC undergrad, grad, and then I worked there for a few years. So it's been about 10 years on campus at NC State.
Oh, right on. I was there, 2007 to 2011. So maybe we overlapped a bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I was an extension associate from 2005 to 2009. So I would have been up in Weaver Labs.
Huh. Small world. Love it.
Yeah, interesting. Still a few minutes. Okay. So we'll just remind everyone again that there's a survey that you'll all be getting the link again at the end of the day today. So that's how we'll be tracking attendance for credit for any professional associations, but also just appreciate your feedback. Any of your comments will help us refine the training for the next round. It looks like another question did pop in there, Ryan.
Oh, yeah, those really small sites. Yeah. Well, sycamore would be bad for those little tiny spots. Yeah, so I am not an arborist. I'll kind of start by saying that most of my experience is in those, reforestation areas. But just kind of picking my brain real quick, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't get huge that might be, a pretty good solution. You see a lot of little leaf linden, But American basswood's a pretty good one too. Kind of a similar poor soil kind of species. I also, another kind of recommendation I have is we can think a little bit outside the box about I love ginkgo's cool. It's a cool story, but we can plant other stuff too, besides ginkgo. But ginkgo is one that doesn't grow too big generally. It won't kind of buckle the sidewalk as much as a silver maple or a sycamore will. Any of those kind of smaller guys, those kind of medium-sized trees could be a good option. Although I do love it, a giant crown over a street as well. There we go. So choosing trees that favor caterpillars, absolutely. And Jason, city of oaks for sure. Oaks are good ones for feeding the bugs. That is absolutely, when we're doing those forest plantings, huge consideration. Making sure there's something blooming over the whole growing period for the pollinators is a really big thing. But also making sure have as good a forage as we can for all the bugs is another big part of it. Just to have that, if we don't have a good ecosystem, we're not going to have that ecosystem service that we kind of want from these areas. So we got to create a nice, good ecosystem.
Yeah, I do. I have a lot of oaks in my yard now, but I've planted a lot of redbuds in bioretention areas over the years as well. So that tends to be a go-to for some of the bioretention areas I've designed.
Nice, and that's another nice small one that everyone loves redbud. You can't. Pretty much everyone loves redbud. You can't go wrong with redbud. So, well, thanks, folks.